Okay, so this is the standard maths version of handling reducible interest loan repayments. Now, because of the complications we talked about in the previous video on this stuff, the payments themselves are either going to be handled in a table like you see right now, or just straight up given to you in the question. Part of the skill is in knowing not to even try and use a compound interest sort of calculation on this, because you've got to recognize when the story is just too complicated for that. Okay, so this will be a demonstration of using a table to do the calculations. In other cases, in most cases I've seen actually, the payments are actually given to you directly in the question. So here's how you do it if it was a table. So we have a table showing the monthly repayments for $1,000 on a bank loan. And that's the first thing to be keeping in mind. This $1,000 thing is really, really important. You have to remember that this is what the table is doing. The table is for if we borrow exactly $1,000. Because the first question here is asking for the monthly payment on a $250,000 loan, which means we need to get like 250 copies of whatever the table's doing. So we'll need 250 lots of whatever number the table gives us. And what number are we going to use? Well, we're told it's 7.5% per annum. So we're looking at this column. And it's for 10 years. So we're looking at this row. And that tells us that we're going to use the number 11.87. So this one here, okay? So our monthly payment would be 11.87. But again, that's only for $1,000, right? We are wanting to borrow $250,000, so we will need 250 lots of this 11.87. And what that number gives us is 2967.5, so $2,967.50. Okay, so what's the total amount to be repaid then? Well, we need to pay this 2,967.5 thing every month for 10 years. So in 10 years, there are going to be 120 months. That just comes from multiplying 10 by 12, or you could just probably know it, but there'll be 120 months. So if we need to pay 2,967.5 each month for 120 months, then we could just multiply. So we could go 2,967.5 times 120, and that's going to give us $356,100. Okay, $100 like that. So of course this is bigger than 250,000, so this 356,100 number is including a whole lot of interest. So how much interest is that going to be? Well, we can take this 356,100 thing and see how far above this $250,000 loan it's going to be. So minus the $250,000 that we originally borrowed. And that's going to tell us just the amount of interest charged on this loan. And so, of course, that would be $106,000 and an extra 100 as well. Okay, so the interest is always the difference between what we actually paid and how much we borrowed at the beginning. Okay, that extra 106,100 is the interest. So the last one asks us for an equivalent flat interest rate. Now, flat interest would mean if it were simple interest, which would mean if the amount of interest charged every single year or month or whatever would be the same every single time. Okay, so we know that we had $106,100 interest charged, and that this number was changing over the duration of the loan. So the amount of interest charged every single month would be different, right? See the previous video for the full explanation. But flat interest means let's pretend that the amount of interest charged every single year was the same. So if this amount was charged over 10 years, well, simple interest would say, let's just divide that by 10 then. And that would give us $10,610 every single year. Okay? And as an interest rate then, we would be taking this $10,610 and dividing it by the original $250,000 to see how big it is in comparison, and that gives us an equivalent flat interest rate. So I'm going to divide 10,610 by 250,000, and that gives me about 4.24% flat interest rate. Okay, so the number was 0.04244 times it by 100 gives us 4.24%. Okay, so reducible interest is calculating the interest every single time the payment's made. Okay, it's sort of resetting the amount owing, and so the interest will reduce as we pay off our loan. But if we're thinking in terms of a flat interest rate, then we grab all of our interest, the whole $106,000 here, and we say, let's just pretend that this $106,100 was split into 10 equal bits for 10 years, right? And so each year the interest would be this thing. And so just by comparing that with the amount we initially borrowed, that will give us the flat interest rate. Okay, so that's all for this one. Thanks for watching. See you around.